Hello, and welcome to Revamping Retirement, a podcast brought to you by Kamak Retirement Group, where we tackle the retirement plan-related issues plaguing fiduciaries and plan sponsors. Our host, Mike Webb, has more than 25 years of experience in the retirement plan industry and is a nationally recognized subject matter expert. We hope you enjoy Revamping Retirement.
Thanks, Kara. Kara McCauley, as always, our excellent producer. Mike Webb is my name, and Revamping Retirement is my game. And here on the Revamping Retirement podcast for edition 25, which means we've been at it for 2 years. Yay! Another milestone in the Revamping Retirement podcast. I have an extremely special guest today. He is what I would like to call the expert's expert. Like when for those of you I think familiar with past podcasts, we've had people on from my plan sponsor Ask the Experts column, and we answer reader questions. And a question I get a lot also is, well, do the experts have anybody to go with? And we go to people like Bob Toth. And Bob is the writer of the wildly popular Business of Benefits blog. It's one of the only 3 blogs that we showcase on our blog roll, on our Top of Mind blog roll. So when you go to my Top of Mind and read my weekly post there, it's one of only 3 blogs you can directly link to, and there's a good reason for that. Basically, if you think you know everything about retirement out there, show of hands out there. Anyone? No? My virtual audience, think you know everything about retirement? I think that's everybody showing their hands. You don't. Bob does. So I'm going to keep it very simple.
Oh my gosh!
And I'll give you an example to start off, because I think you'll find this one interesting. Bob, first of all, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you, Mike, and thank you for having me.
Yeah, and one of the ones, here's an example of something where I wouldn't have even thought to ask this question. You recently, the last few months or so, did a blog entry on partial plan terminations.
Sure.
And everybody out there, you see every article that's written out there is like, oh yeah, everybody, all retirement plans are subject to these rules, blah blah blah. And they never really get into the details. And then no one even thinks, and people like me just kind of read that and go, oh, they must be right. And and never think to ask the question, are 403Bs, since they are somehow different in a lot of ways, are they somehow different in this way? And then you went and broke it down exactly how it was different. And then people like me are like, I wouldn't even know to ask this question. Thank you, Bob, because now we get clarification. And it's great because you also write in a way where people can understand it too. I mean, I talk about the expert's expert, but you also, you have a way in your column, in your blog, really to kind of make it so that, someone who may not be an industry expert, like I think I am, on these things can also read it. So I love that about it. There's a lot of things there's so many things I want to pick your brain about, but I think the first one I'm gonna pick your brain about is annuities, because I've written a lot about annuities, and it's kind of funny because people come to me with 401k plans, in the 401k plan world, and they say, well, what's all this talk about annuities? And what will happen if I put an annuity? Because they always fear the unknown, right? What'll happen if I put an in-plan annuity in my plan? And I'm like, go look at some 403B plans, because 403B plans have had them since literally the beginning of time. But
feels like it doesn't. They really do, right?
Yeah. They've had them for a long time, and we can learn some things from the experience there. Some good, some not so good. But I thought I'd pick your brain a little bit about that aspect of things, because I think annuities are just a fascinating thing in that, again, you have one segment of the marketplace, namely the corporate 401k segment, which has almost no in-plan annuities. Yet you have this other segment which has an experience with them.
Right. Mike, first of all, I want to stop while I'm ahead. Maybe we should hang up this podcast now. You were so complimentary and so glowing. I always like quitting when I'm ahead. So goodbye, audience. It's been nice seeing you. I'm gone. And I've got to share with you one of my favorite stories about 403B before we dive into annuities, because I have spent a lot of time on annuities, and I think we published a couple of seminal papers on this stuff, on how DC annuities actually work. But on the 403B side, I've always disliked 403Bs. As a matter of fact, when I was at Lincoln, the general counsel called me in his office and said, "Toth, the IRS is auditing these 403B plans." This was in the late 90s. And we got a nasty letter from the IRS disqualifying this 403B plan. And I told the general counsel, no, I don't want anything to do with it. I said, I don't like 403Bs. I don't understand them. I said, we have all these desk drawer rules out there that no one gets, and not written. I said, I want nothing to do it. No, he goes, Sophie, forget, I'm the boss. You're going to do it. And what will it take? So we negotiated a little bit. Yeah, right. How much you can negotiate with the general counsel, right? And so we actually then at that point, I dove in and actually I traveled the country for the next 3 years with my mentor, a guy named Roger Sisk. And how we had approached the initial 403B audits back at the late 90s when the IRS was first focusing on this stuff was to try to make all our clients look good. A lot of our competitors, or probably some of your customers as well, they had chosen to actually bury their heads in the sand and say, "Nah, this is not a problem. It's their problem. Remember, they're individual annuities. That's individual taxpayers' problem." We took a different approach, and so we met with attorneys from coast to coast and helping them defend all of these audits. We ended up being involved eventually in over 130 audits, and going through that back in the late 90s really took off. But my story is I'm sticking to it. I never wanted to be in 403B. I was forced into it by the general counsel.
Now,
but I found my spot. I do love it now.
Yeah, just to put this in perspective, everyone out there in our audience, but Bob's now one of the preeminent experts on 403Bs. So a guy who didn't want to be in 403B, who didn't really like it at all, is now one of the experts on it. So it's funny. It's funny how things work out. It's funny how things work out sometimes. And we should also. So how did you said you were at Lincoln, right? Is that what you said you were?
I was.
Yeah. How did you get into to the blog and everything and getting on and doing starting your own, starting your practice and stuff?
Well, I joined Baker & Daniels, which is now, after many mergers, now they call it Faegre Drinker now, which you all know. Nick Karoba, who's now the AGC of Mutual of America. And he's a marvelous 403B expert in his own right. They're a big producer, 403B producer. And he joined at the same time, and we decided we had a bunch to say. He had come from the ACLI, and you got to be careful when you're at those kind of organizations. You can't speak your mind all so much. But we had the opportunity to speak our minds, and so we actually started it. And when we both left, a gentleman named Jerry Kalish had actually started reading my blog back then. It was 2008 of all things.
Yeah, and you were one of the first.
And then Jerry actually had picked up with a group called LexBlog. Kevin O'Keefe's group, and they are a legal blogging community, and they do tremendous support, and I've been with them since. He says, you got to meet Kevin, and you got to hook up to LexBlog, and I did, and from there it's been fun just speaking my mind. Now you got to be careful. We now have clients in like 45 states and 5 countries, so you got to be careful and choosing how loud I can speak about certain things. But for the most part, we've been pretty good about being able to still slip in the stuff that people forget about. It's all in the details, right? They're like the thing you're talking about, the partial plan terminations. Like you, people in this business who are successful in this business tend to be passionate about it, and they love what they're doing, and they work their tails off. And even on the we talk about annuities and the compensation side of things. The very good reps that I've known over the years, they work hard for the money. And as I've talked to the Department of Labor about advisor comp, if you really want to force and want to provide for more deeper retirement coverage for small plans, somebody's got to talk to those employer sponsors, whether they be 401k sponsors or 403b sponsors. This stuff just doesn't happen. They're out making widgets, or they're performing their tax exempt mission, or whatever it is they're doing. They don't care about this stuff. And particularly in the 403b space, they don't have our HR people to care about this stuff either. They're more worried about raising money to perform their mission. And so, any more than any regulator wants to get paid for what they do, people who distribute this stuff need to get paid fairly, right? There's always a problem with overpriced annuity products. And transparency and opaqueness is really an issue which we're dealing with. But for the most part, come on, comp's not bad. Even in the large case market where you have commission-free products, right? But you have very high-priced people who are actually approaching the Fortune 100 types and dealing with all their products. And yeah, the price going to plans might be smaller, but these are very expensive people who are getting paid. And guess what? Their compensation is coming out of the product as well. The money's just not, it's not like manna coming from heaven. So people get paid for doing the kind of work and to increasing retirement coverage. So.
Interesting that you say that, because I think a lot of progress has been made in the area of 403Bs and fees, especially in the large plan space, which is where I primarily work. Yeah. I don't think as much progress has been made on the annuity front. I mean, because it's kind of funny, because I tell people, people come to me all the time and say, literally, there's people, 403B participants, like, I'm interested in buying an annuity. And I'm like, well, what do you have now? And they'll tell me what their investments are in their 403B plans. Like, you already have an annuity. You probably don't need to buy another retail annuity, because you have two annuities now. You have your 403B annuity and Social Security. They just don't know. The engagement rates for these products, even the best engagement rates I've seen, are probably in the 20s in terms of percentage of people who actually annuitize. I'm not talking about people who invest and accumulate, but people who actually annuitize. And to me, there's been tremendous progress made on fees, even on annuity fees,
Right. Yes,
but there hasn't been a lot of progress on, hey, telling the participants, hey, if you're going to be an annuity contract as opposed to a mutual fund contract, and a lot of my large plan participants have a choice. Well, if you're going to choose to be in an annuity contract, you might want to consider not taking a lump sum every time. You might want to actually consider that annuitization. So why do you think people don't do that?
Economists and people a whole lot smarter than I have been trying to tackle this problem for a number of years, and they keep on coming up with a lot of different reasons why people are doing it. Let me give you an example. There is a number of people who are saying, well, they're not being offered in plans because of the safest available annuity rule, and employers are fearful of buying an annuity and the insurance company going belly up 20 years from now and them getting sued on it. And so there's so much focus on it. And we ended up with a clause in the Secure Act that granted the safe harbor. That was a red herring. I have been working on the Secure Act clauses for about a dozen years. That bill has been about a dozen years in the making. And I've probably worked actively on probably half of the provisions on the benefit clause provisions. But I still remember sitting in a bar in D.C. with an old friend of mine when I was trying to teach him a little bit about annuities, a very prominent attorney. And we were going back and forth. We spent the day actually going over how annuities work in D.C. plans. And we were making great progress. We went out to lunch, and he says, well, don't we have this problem with safest available annuity? I said, no. Annuities are being purchased by trusts for hundreds of years. I mean, it's not a problem. And he goes, no, there's got to be a problem. And he's prominent, and he's loud, and he actually makes it dent. And he started talking about this great fear. And he says, guess what? Annuity sales are going to take off once this fear of the safest available annuity is removed from plan sponsors. And no, it hasn't. I think that clause, that the Secure Act clause comes in, it's that gives and what I'm talking about, the Secure Act has a section in it which grants fiduciary safe harbor relief to plan sponsors which choose certain insurance companies to provide their annuities. If you follow some very minimal, very low bar rules, and mostly based upon what are the representations being made to them by insurance companies, you cannot get sued, you get a pass on the choice of the insurance company as the provider of your annuity. All right. But Mike, you probably noticed, of course, the big rush to buy annuities by plan sponsors passed. I mean, I've noticed it too, right?
Non-existent. Well, to be fair, some people are blaming some of that on the pandemic, but I suspect when we get out of the pandemic, it'll be the exact same thing, and that there'll be very little take up of 401k corporate plan sponsors of annuities. And to me, that's almost kind of a shame, because I think annuities do, you could say what you want about annuities. I mean, there's a classic line that annuities are sold and not bought.
Right.
But there's a lot of quality annuity products out there. And to be honest, I have no problem with someone saying, hey, I want to, when I've gotten to a certain point in life where I've got a certain amount of, I've got, 7 figures in my retirement, DC retirement plan, I want to insure some of that. I want to protect some of that from
That's right.
from a market downturn. But the problem is I don't think people have that level. The average person, and even the average person with a 6-7 figure account balance in a retirement plan, doesn't have that understanding and doesn't even realize they bought an annuity the moment they walked in the door of a 403b plan, because that's the choice they made. So the biggest waste to me, and tell me if you disagree, is that people are kind of paying for something that they're not ultimately using. And some of these annuities have very favorable terms for annuitization. Some of these accumulation annuities have very favorable terms for annuitization. I would jump at the chance if I was in a plan like that.
Yeah, I'm excited because if you're going to annuitize, you should probably do it in a retirement plan, because you're going to get purchase rates and terms that you're just not going to be able to get on a retail basis. You look at the IRA annuities. Some of the loads of these things are through the roof. As an actuary once told me, the pricing can be a bit salty, as he called them. And so I'm actually, there are some new products coming into the retirement plan marketplace that I'm excited about. Just as disclosure, I'm working on a few of them, so I'm really excited about them. But the options they bring, the flexibility they bring. So the new products that we're seeing, such as the GMLB, the guaranteed minimum withdrawal benefits, the guaranteed minimum lifetime benefits, all of those address the biggest fear that participants have, I think. My brother put it best. An annuity contract, he says, is a bet against an insurance company, and the insurance company is going to win.
Exactly.
And I think that's what most plan participants think. So what you got to do is you got to address that basic fear. You got to be able to take away that inflexibility, that lock in. Even a QLAC. And as much as I like QLACs because they're cheap, they're simple. Yeah, you go in. But you lock in your money. You're going to give it to the insurance company, and if you die, if you're single life annuity, it dies with you. Well, that's the nature of insurance. One reason why I like being in the insurance side of this business is because the commercial pooling of risk under annuities is actually where good business sense and good social policy meet. We pool risk all the time. Annuities are all about pooling risk. They are not mutual funds. One of the problems the insurance industry had, and at one time, Mike, I chaired the pension committee at the American Council for Life Insurance for a number of years, and I was on that committee for years. I'm well ingrained in the industry. But one of the things that my brethren had always been fearful of is they wanted to hide the fact that they were selling annuities. So talk about your group non-registered variable annuity contract that's prominent in the 401k space. No one ever wanted to use the term annuity. The mutual fund distributors, the reps would always, and they didn't want annuities. I remember talking to one distributor who said, "I love your product, but you got to get rid of that fixed fund out of that thing." He says it's just scares people away because it's just an insurance product. But the fixed fund in some of these group annuity contracts are some of the best things going. You take a look on the TIA. You look at the rate being paid in a money market where they're breaking the buck. The TIA fund is through the roof, as are many other insurance general account funds. But the distributors don't like it. It's insurance. Insurance companies for years ran away from the fact that insurance was a healthy thing. And so now we're stuck with a whole bunch of participants and plan sponsors who are very suspicious of these things. So where we're going now, and where the product development now is going, is they're trying to address those fears. The lack of flexibility, the lack of access to these things, the locking it in, the non-portability of it. One of the things that the Secure Act did, Mike, which you're probably well aware of, is there is a portability rule in here that if you actually purchase a lifetime income product from a vendor in the plan, and the plan fired that vendor, you still have the right at that point to take a distribution of your annuity contract from that plan. And that is a cool thing. That actually, to me, is probably one of the things, much more than the fiduciary safe harbor, that will encourage plans now to be able to purchase these things, because one of the biggest bugaboos that insurance companies have always had in developing these products is just that. If I get fired or if people stop, how do you make one of these things portable? And so there's a whole set of products now being designed to take advantage of that, of the Secure Act rules. So, and these things we need to watch for them because they will address those fears that plan participants have. I'm just giving all my money to the insurance company, and we all know they're a bunch of thieves and they're all overpriced. So, the products are overpriced. And the insurance industry needs to do something in the meantime, too. We need to be able to break that whole problem of opaqueness. How do you know you're paying the right price for an annuity contract? You never know, right? Where's the comp? The good thing about qualified plans and large 403B plans, and now hopefully moving down to the smaller retail space, is the comp is actually much different. All right, it's more reasonable. You see the pricing of it, particularly in large plans, it's more approaching the 401k side and how you actually are paying for distribution costs and things like that. But there's got to be a way, and the regulators can't figure this one out. Economists can't figure this one out. We've had many conversations, and believe it, many of these conversations are over beer. Beer is an important concept here in resolving the issues on and lifetime income. I mean, I don't know how many times I sat in a bar with a number of economists where we would actually draw pictures on beer napkins about how we're going to solve this problem. Doggone it.
They don't call it the annuity puzzle for nothing. So.
Well, actually, we created this one thing that we actually called the beer napkin annuity. And I actually think I did a blog probably about 7 or 8 years ago, actually called the beer napkin annuity. And I still think it's one of the best things going.
Well, I think on that note, it's a good time to wrap things up. But Bob Toth, thank you very much for appearing on Revamping Retirement today. His blog, go check it out, is Business of Benefits. For Kara McCauley, our producer, and Bob Toth, I'm Mike Webb, and this has been Revamping Retirement.
The content in this podcast is for institutional investors and plan sponsors. The information is intended to be educational and is not tailored to the investment needs of any specific investor. All examples of investor gains and losses are hypothetical and intended to illustrate the importance of early saving and consistent retirement contributions over time. Investment decisions should be based on an individual's own goals, time horizon, and risk tolerance. Nothing in this content should be considered as legal or tax advice, and listeners are encouraged to consult their own lawyer, accountant, or other advisor before making any financial decision. Thank you for listening to Revamping Retirement.